Hi everyone, welcome to Mindful and Driven. I'm your host, Amadit Palmer. On this podcast, I interview people from a wide variety of backgrounds to understand how they achieve balance in their lives. I want to help you to not lose sight of what's really important whilst chasing your dreams. Today's guest is Tim Denning, an online writer with a massive audience. After struggling with poor mental health, he turned his life around and shared his thoughts to the world. He's had over 500 million views and is one of the most followed writers on Medium, as well as having over 300,000 followers on LinkedIn. He rarely appears in the audio or video format, so I'm especially excited to have him on today. Welcome, Tim. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Amadip. Thanks for having me, mate. Obviously, we're always chatting, but good to do it in a more formal sense over a podcast.
I think a lot of my viewers are going to love this.
Yeah, we've got similar audiences. We're both in the kind of entrepreneur space, both write online. Obviously, we've known each other for quite some time. So, yeah, man, it's good just to jump on. You've got some pretty wacky questions for me, which I don't normally get asked. So it's going to be certainly a challenge on my side.
I guess the first question I ask is, what's some common advice you disagree with? And I know that from reading your articles and your online presence, there's probably going to be quite a nugget here.
Yeah, I'm a little contrary to a lot of popular opinions. So I had a bit of a think about this. The two that are very contrary for me is one is labels. So people spend their whole day going, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? And then the classic one is, am I an entrepreneur? Am I not an entrepreneur? And I just laugh because they're all just dumb labels that are sort of, there's no like test that says you are or you aren't of any of these. They're all flexible, and a lot of it just revolves around a belief system, which is that if you think you're an entrepreneur, then congratulations, you are, because all it means is that you've made more than 99 cents from doing something other than your job, and I think we've all done that. So therefore, congratulations, we're all entrepreneurs. I like to use the one that Io came up with, who's a Medium writer, who said that if you get more than one deposit to your bank account, you're an entrepreneur. So he sort of says it like, get a second customer. So you've got a 9-to-5 job, that's your customer number one. All you need is one more customer, and then you tick the box. So that's the first one. The second one is just around common advice would be around pessimism. So I really don't believe in pessimism. I think it's a disease and it sucks the energy out of not only yourself, but everybody that you're around. And I just don't believe in it. People go, but you got to be a realist. And it's like, yeah, but then if you're a realist, you're basically focusing on your human programming, which says that everything's screwed and you're going to die and it's hard to find food. And you're just basically wiring yourself to have a really shitty experience. So I'm the opposite. I think you should start as an optimist, because pessimism is our default nature, which means if you're an optimist, pessimism is going to steal a bit of that optimism away just naturally through evolution. But if you're a pessimist and then pessimist is already stealing away some of the pessimism, then you end up in sort of outrage, screaming at a screen type scenario. So they're the two kind of common things that I come up in a lot of my articles that I definitely disagree with.
I think the label thing is really interesting, because it's something I'm going through at the moment where I quit my job. I guess I'm an entrepreneur. Well, I am an entrepreneur based on your definition there. But I think there's a lot of pressure at the moment to make yourself easy to understand, where people give themselves these labels as a kind of crutch of, this is who I am. But in reality, we're so much more than any label we give ourselves. So You might say, I'm this, but you're also 100 other things. I don't think we should lose that multi-dimensional aspect of ourselves, because it's what makes everything interesting.
Yeah, people want to box themselves into categories. We see it in writing, right? Where people go, what's your niche in writing? It's like, I don't have a niche, because they all blend into each other. People go, do you write about business? I'm like, yeah. And they go, well, on LinkedIn, you can't write about anything that's not business. I'm like, well, but life is business as well. Like if you go to a job, that's your personal life and it's business. So there are no boundaries. I don't know. I'm really big on just pushing the boundaries. I think it's stupid. I've got another friend who's a writer who's, what do you call it? She's transgender. So she's gone from man to woman. And people try and slap all these labels. And I'm just like, you know what? Everyone just shut up. She, he, whatever is just going to be whatever they want to be. And they're going to wear whatever they want to wear. And in the end, they're still an awesome writer and they're still my friend. And I don't really care what gender they're identifying with.
With the pessimism side as well, is that something you've always believed, or is it something that's changed over time, where you were a pessimist in the past and then you changed your belief systems?
Yeah, so I was a pessimist for most of my life, and it led me to like really kind of traumatic mental health issues. But the problem was I didn't know that that's part of what was causing it. And now obviously I've healed from all that. I've realized that like living that sort of lifestyle, you're just naturally going to go into this downward spiral and your mental health is just going to get worse and worse if that's how you see the world. So part of the healing was that I started getting coaches and going to different seminars, and I learned that even if things are crap, if you can just kind of learn to see the bright side of each of it, you'll sort of naturally come out of it. So it's more, I would say, a technique and a way of life that I've adopted, but I definitely wasn't born with it. Definitely not.
And was there a particular time where you really struggled with the balance and like the pessimism overwhelmed you? And then what did you do to get out of that?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I can think of a few, like if you write online, you're going to cop a lot of haters. That's just the nature of how it works, especially as you start to write for a longer period of time. So I had one particular moment where I was writing a lot on LinkedIn, and I managed to attract this guy who basically set up like a mob, and they would go on all my stuff, and he'd get hundreds of people just to write like stuff on there. And you might go, oh, that's innocent, just brush it off. But they were quite clever. They did their research, and they would take like events from my life that were true, but then twist them just enough so that they were untrue. And so people started saying to me at work, oh, did you really do that thing that I read on LinkedIn? And so it really started to hurt. And so it became a bit of a downward spiral. And, you asked, how do I get out of it? I mean, I was a bit lucky there where I had to develop really thick skin really quickly. And I was lucky that particular platform did eventually sort of kick these people off and ban them, because clearly that's what they were doing. But I just had to focus on something else. Almost had to kind of unplug and go, all right, LinkedIn's going to be kind of a no-go for a little while. I'm still going to be there occasionally, but I'm just going to have to back right off and try and find something else to do than focus on that. Because if I focus on it, I'm just going to get upset, and it doesn't solve anything, and it's out of my control. Like I don't own the platform. I can't tell these people to get off. I've tried to tell them that what they're saying is incorrect. They're not going to listen because their goal is not to speak the truth. It's just because this is entertainment for them, right? And there's a whole backstory as to why they did it. Like the guy that was leading it had sold his business for like $10 million. And the day after he sold it, the new owners fired him from the business because he was a bit of a smartass. So he basically got stuck at home with $10 million. He was bored out of his brain. And so he just thought, I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll look for people that I don't like or I disagree with. And because I've got all this money, I'm just going to take the piss out of them. And he set up a YouTube channel, and he started parroting all these people, and like really went into it as a full-time job because he had the resources to do so and the money to do it. And I just happened to obviously come up at the wrong time, and I was his number one target. I just keep saying people that do that eventually are going to come unstuck. And he did, and now he's banned off basically every platform, and all of his mob and that are all gone, and that's the end of it. I've got no ill will towards him. I'd love to jump on a podcast with him someday just to understand, like, I wonder what the rationale is for someone to do that. You got to have empathy, I think, towards people that want to do that type of thing. But then I also look and go, well, like when I was going through that similar phase, I was going on YouTube and leaving really nasty comments on people's videos because I was just angry and pissed off with life. So we've all, I think, been at that stage at some point. So if I can see a little bit of myself in what he's doing, then it helps to take the sting off that really negative situation, get into other people's shoes.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a common problem now where as soon as somebody puts themselves out there or puts themselves out of their lane, there's always going to be people who try to bring them down. And I know from friends out of the writing world who do other things as well, it's really hard for them to deal with because it's so overwhelming. You don't really get that in your day-to-day life where you're walking around and somebody just shouts hatred at you, right? What you said there about the distractions, was there anything else you did just to kind of get your mind off things and unplug? So was it just focusing on other areas? Did you go to people for support?
I definitely spoke to a few people, like mutual writer friends, to say, hey, have you dealt with this? What do you recommend? A little bit of sort of meditation, like sort of 10 minutes a day of meditation just to start the day on a calm kind of mindset. I found that emails became a bit of a trigger because that was a place where people would sort of contact me and say, hey, it's happened again, another blow up, that sort of thing. So trying to stay off emails or maybe not wake up to emails, I think was very helpful. And then, just doing other things. And what that kind of looked like is obviously writing in other places and then just doing a lot of reading. So at the moment, I'm reading a book. I'm just trying to think what the name is. The Courage to be Disliked. Because I just thought, you know what, this is a handy skill to have. And I'm not very good at it, if I'm being honest. One of our mutual friends, Sean Kernan, he's my idol in this space. The guy has thick skin. You can say anything and you're never going to faze him. But I'm just not that good at it. So I'm trying to read this book at the moment, see if I can fix it.
Yeah. And to be honest, even with me, when I'm putting myself out there now, I still have this kind of fear that it's not almost that people are going to come and attack me, but that people are almost talking behind my back, being like, why is he doing this? Or he's not very good. And it's that fear which it's just irrational because it doesn't matter what people say. I can't control it, and there's never ever going to be a case where everybody likes what you do.
So there's different levels. Like there's people that won't like what you do. I personally don't care, and I just block that out. There's people that leave negative comments, that are quite harsh. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm past that a long time ago. I think that the last level though is like people that flat out just make up a lie and they circulate it in these sort of mobs, and it's just not true. That's the one I have a problem with. Because that hits your credibility and people start, like, I'll give you an example. I could spread a rumor that, like, you've got a gambling problem. That's not true. But if I have a big audience and then I get 10 other writers to all say that Amardeep has a gambling problem, like that really hurts. And especially if it's me, because, like, I'm someone that you know. If it's just a random on the internet, you don't care. That's the final stage of the kind of game as I like to look at it. And that's a hard one. I don't have any answers on what to do with that.
You quit your job around the same time that I did a couple months ago. How are you finding that life so far? Are you finding that you've got a good balance, or are you struggling at the moment with any areas in particular? And what's the kind of thing you're striving for? What's success going to look like at the end of all of this?
Yeah, it's something I spend most of my day thinking about. There's a lot of productivity guilt. So like I get days where I think I didn't achieve enough. And what I'm finding is like I am not as efficient with my time as I was when I had the job, and that's very frustrating. But then if I sort of take a bird's eye view, I've realized that I probably am a bit of an overachiever, and I am trying to do way too much, because if I listed all the things I've done since I quit my job, you'd, I think, be pretty impressed. But for whatever reason, I'm just never impressed myself. What I originally did before I quit was I wrote a notepad file with ideal day, and that's like all the things that I want to do, just rough time slots. And I really haven't kept to a lot of that, and I kind of wish that I did. And there are different slumps. So when I first quit, the first 3 weeks, I was like insane productive. Then I had a few weeks where I literally just wasted whole days and did nothing. And then now I've got a balance where some days I'm working really hard and other days I just do nothing and just listen to podcasts. So it's a very difficult balancing act. It sounds like it's going to be this dream for everyone that's listening. You're probably going, yeah, it's amazing. I would say it's not as much of a dream as what you think. And actually the lifestyle starts to feel like a 9 to 5 in certain elements, except you don't have a boss coming in over the top of you. So I think to successfully do it, you do need a fair bit of self-control and discipline. And you probably need some tools like we were discussing before, some sort of stopwatch or time tracking tool I think is important, and someone to keep you accountable. So my partner that I live with, she's always making sure that I'm ticking the goals and doing what I should be doing. I think if it was just me, things would go out the door. Yeah, it's difficult, but it's definitely, I'm glad I made the decision, like I'm sure you did, but it's not as easy as it looks.
And I think you've talked about this before as well, Parkinson's law, and where work expands to fill the time you have available. Because before I quit, I was like, I'm going to have 8 extra hours a day. But I don't know if those 8 hours have gone, because I'm not doing 8 hours more work a day, definitely. It's one of the things, once you get to the other side, you realize, like, I've been less productive because you have more time. Because what you mentioned there about the time tracking, that's how I'm trying to deal with it, where I'm using an app called Clockify. I can put my different tasks in there and I can start a stopwatch, and then I stop it once I finish the task. And it's keeping me much more honest because I'm realizing how long I'm taking in different things. Whereas if I start something and then I start something else and then I don't finish the first task, it just becomes a jumble and I don't actually know how long I'm taking to do things. And what I found is that makes my planning really bad, because I think I'm going to achieve X amount of things in one day, but I never do that based on how long those tasks have taken me in the past, because I'm going based on my guesses rather than actual data.
When you're mapping out the tasks, I mean, I did that as well, but I always like put an asterisk next to like, what's the one thing that has to be done today that's non-negotiable? And if I get the big thing done every day, then I feel really happy. But I have found the Parkinson's law is probably the most true thing so far. But there is a difference. So, okay, I don't think I'm as productive as I would like to be. But when I had the job, I was constantly stressed out during daylight hours, and I would finish the day in a pissed off mood, which means that when I went to do the work that I really wanted to do, I was doing it in a pissed off mood. So the quality of that work and the negativity that was thrown into that work was not good. So you can't just measure it in productivity. It's also the quality of the work, and I think the energy. So I've got much better energy now that I don't have that sucking all that energy away, and I have the control, right? And that's what I want. I want the control of how I do things, because I don't want to be constantly told how to do it. Because a lot of the time in a job, they tell you how to do stuff and they just have no idea. Like I worked a sales job. without sounding too sort of cocky, I know sales better than anyone else I was working with. So you'd have people that have never done sales jobs telling you how to do sales. And it's like, well, you haven't done it. Like, this has been my whole life. Just give me the goals that you want me to achieve and I'll run off and go do them. But you never can quite do that. So yeah, it's not just about time spent. There's more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm happier now than I was before, but it's not quite been the dream that I thought it was going to be. So my expectation has been measured a bit, but it's a useful transition because now I know myself a bit better and I can make my plans in a way to get the most out of myself while still not overburdening myself.
Essentially, you've taken a big risk or what might look like a big risk. And so by doing that, you get to know yourself better. But this is the thing that I keep telling people. It's not really a risk because you can always go back to a job. There's always going to be a job. That's what I can guarantee. But there's not always going to be a time where you may be able to take that kind of risk. And the thing that people don't understand is that it takes a lot of courage to do what we've done. I'm not trying to talk myself up or sound like Superman. I'm just telling you right now, it sounds easy, but it's really hard. The courage to actually, in the middle of a pandemic, cut off your job, leave a very high-paying job to do something that has, that's difficult, and especially writing as well. Like, you tell most people, I'm a writer. They think you're like worth $5. Like, that's the truth. They assume that you're a bum. So yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, and with that side as well, it's interesting because you don't want people to think you're a bum, but at the same time, you don't want to humble brag every time you tell people you're a writer. So I don't want to be, I'm a writer who's got X million views every time I introduce myself. So it's what you said about labels. It's working out that it's not so important how I label myself, because if somebody wants to judge me, then they can judge me. That's fine.
Yeah, as writers, we do have to use a few vanity metrics in our bios and stuff. And I don't personally love it, but I've just got over it that, like, if you don't sell yourself, it's very difficult. And I think just do it with a level of humility. If you're going to tell people what you do, it's fine. And it's okay to talk it up a bit. Like, we've all got kind of achievements. I think people that are offended by that, they're not the sort of people that I want to spend time with. Like, I want to be around people that are okay to talk about their achievements and not have to feel guilty. And I'm not trying to make other people feel bad. I'm just telling you this is what I've done, is something that I'm proud of. And if you don't respect or love that, that's up to you. That's cool. But doesn't mean I'm not going to wear it as a badge of honor because it's something that I've done.
To me, it's a problem where I think more people should be open about what they've achieved, because I've met so many people who've done incredible things, but then they don't mention it. So you find out later on that you've been sitting with somebody who's achieved whatever and they're a world champion at something. And then it's like, why didn't you mention that? That would be so fascinating to talk about. Is the worry about being considered arrogant. If you're talking to somebody and they're worth your time, they're going to want to know about your best stories.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. I've got a friend who runs a Medium publication called Steve Campbell. He runs The Ascent. And I've known Steve for like many, many years. And we just happened to be chatting, I don't know, a few months ago. And I found out for the very first time that Steve used to work for Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, he was like his number 2 employee, worked directly for Gary for a number of years, has met some incredible people, can tell you some amazing stories. I've known him all this time. I had no idea. I was like, dude, like, why are you not telling people this? This is an amazing achievement. And it wasn't just working there for 6 months. He was like a long-time employee of Gary's. So that's a great example of, like, it's okay to talk about what you've done. Otherwise, I can't feel like I know you properly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's making yourself open up to people. Some people will think you're arrogant. That's absolutely fine. You can't please everybody. But then other people will be really interested in what you're doing. And then you'll have a much deeper and more engaging conversation because you're willing to take the risk of being considered arrogant. Yeah,
and it doesn't just go with vanity metrics. I think the other side that I often like to touch on is, I don't like using the word vulnerability because it's used way too much, but to be also able to go the other side and talk about, like, what are the things where you just completely destroyed yourself. And again, it's not failure porn. It's not to try and, sort of make out like you're hardly done. But if you can also be able to talk about the big things and the really bad things that, like, you got divorced, or, I got a friend that, like, lost a baby in childbirth, and to be able to stand up and talk about that not only takes a lot of courage, but people get to know you on a much different level. I don't see that enough. And I wish I saw it more, because people are like, oh, it's a failure. It's like, no, it's not. It's just part of who you are. It's actually very interesting. It shapes how you see the world. People that have gone through that sort of thing are very humble. So I try not to overdo it, but I am someone as well that like to sort of add that in as well.
Yeah, and it's just being human, because we see the curated feeds of people on Instagram or social media. That's not what life is like. So everybody has got problems. Everybody's got something wrong or a battle they're fighting in their heads. And that's okay. You don't need to be ashamed of that. And I know that you've talked a lot about your mental health in your writing over the years. That's a sign of strength that you're able to express your feelings. And it's helped so many people. It's helped millions of people because they know that other people are experiencing the same thing they are. So coming back to one thing with the mindsets is there a particular mindset shift that you think people could make that would make them happier and make them have more balanced lives?
Yeah, I think there's a couple that have worked for me. One is about having a goal to have less, not more. So people keep saying, I need more money, I need a bigger house, I need a better job. If you can somehow try and break that cycle and almost go the other direction and go like, how could I just cut out a lot of things that are a waste of time? Or what would it be like if I just did one thing with most of my time and not 60 things? I wonder what the depth of focus would be if I did that. Yeah, it's a bit of a scary thought for some people. So, it's kind of minimalism in a way, I think has definitely helped. I'm trying to think what another kind of mindset shift is. I mean, there's so many. I use reframes is probably the other big one. A reframe kind of comes from psychology. It's sort of associated with the concept of neuroplasticity, which is basically that your brain can be, completely rewired. And I got this one from Tony Robbins. He told the story once of a great reframe. He was training with a golf trainer and he went to hit the ball and it went nowhere near the tee, like went off to the side. And the golf trainer said, all you need to do if you want to get it near the hole is adjust your swing by about 1, 2, maybe 3 millimeters. So just the tiniest shift on that golf club. And then when he did that, it went straight next to the hole. And so that's a cool reframe where you think, this is really challenging. I'm not even close to what I need to be able to do. And it's like, well, what happens if you were really close, you just didn't realize, and it's just 1 millimeter to the left or the right? So these are sort of reframes that I use on a daily basis just to break patterns. So if I'm going through a pattern where something's a bit negative or I'm not getting the results I want, I'm like, how do I get out of this pattern? How do I interrupt the programming? And I like to think of it, I'm a little bit older than most people, but like CDs or records. So I used to be a DJ, right? And if someone scratched the CD, if I go to put that in the CD player, it doesn't play anymore. The pattern that's printed on the CD is completely interrupted and it sounds like a different song. It's completely stuffed. What happens if you could do that with your own brain? And the answer is that you can. You need reframes. And what is a reframe? It's just a complicated way of saying basically a quote that you can use to interrupt a pattern.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting about the slight shifts that people can make, because I know myself and I know probably many other people as well listening, that they think they're so far away from where they want to be. And they're focused on the huge gap of what they've got to do, rather than if they make a few small changes, it could actually make a big difference to their lives. And it's this idea of kind of micro habits as well. If you don't need to create huge change in life to see the results, it could actually be just waking up 5 minutes early to do 5 minutes of meditation, for example. And that 5 minutes meditation have a much bigger effect on your whole day.
There's another way to look at it, right? So the other one comes around people. So I'll give you another great example. We're like a millimeter away from the thing that we think we can never have. And I'll give you a classic one I had a few years ago. I said to a friend, I'd just love to meet Richard Branson. Wouldn't that be cool? But I said, he's worth so much money. I'm not even close to that guy's circle. And this person challenged me. And long story short, basically I worked out that for me to get to Richard Branson, there's a guy called Mark that I know. He knows another guy in America, and that guy in America knows Richard. So actually, I got 2 people, and this is completely random, and I got 2 people, and I actually proved it. I got an invite to Richard's Necker Island thing for an event because I wanted to prove to myself that, actually, I could sit down with Richard Branson. So see the psychology? Like, I'm just a random guy at that time working in a bank, making like very small amount of money. And just with a little bit of creative thinking, I worked out that there's 2 people in between me and Richard Branson. Most people talk themselves out of them and go, no, I could never do that. And it's like, well, Richard's actually not that different to everybody else. I know his brand's pumped up and he sounds like this amazing guy, but he's just actually a pretty simple person. I know people that have known him for many years and they say he's not the guy you see in the media. He's just a normal guy who likes surfing. That's it. So that's another way to look at it, not just results, but around people.
So in my role as the editor of Influence Handbook, I've had a few of these run-ins with people who've started these hugely successful businesses where they then sold them for hundreds of millions. And one of the things that's always surprised me is just they're just normal people. At the beginning, I was so intimidated by them and think I needed to impress them in some way and I was acting unnaturally. But they just want to chat. They don't want people to treat them like that because they're just human. They know that they've got their flaws and they've got the same problems that we all have. And I found that really refreshing to know that somebody who one guy started a company that was worth $500 million, but he wanted to have a chat with me. And to me, that was incredible. Why would he want to talk to me? Because we've all got different skills in life. And for people listening, they've probably got something they can do better than most billionaires or most people who run countries, because we've all got different skills, and that makes us interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that guy that's worth $500 million, another way to look at it, and this pisses people off when I say this, but I always look at him and go, so he's really successful in that area of his life, which is accumulating money, but all the other areas of his life had to suffer to get that $500 million. That's the part that people don't understand. So if you and I just said that we're going to be crap in every area of our life except golf, you and I would be the next Tiger Woods, no problem. But the thing is, we're not willing to do that. Normally we spread our focus across multiple things. And also, it's like people might worship that guy and go, well, he's worth $500 million. In the end, who really cares? So he's managed to hoard money better than anybody else. I don't know. Like, does that make him better than all of us? I mean, that's a subjective thing. I personally don't care.
It comes back to the theme of this podcast about how to find that balance, because yes, if you give up everything else, you could be really rich, but that's not really the aim of life, because your relationship would suffer, your family life would suffer, your health would suffer, your physical health, your mental health. That, I think, rounds things off quite nicely in terms of what we're trying to target here. And people who might be much more successful in one area could also be wanting to learn from you in another area. So you've always got something to offer other people.
Yeah, well, that guy that's worth $500 million probably wants to learn from you about writing, because I'm sure that's something that he's not good at. Yeah, you're not that far away from the person that you might idolize, is another way to look at it. But then the other thing that upsets people is I tell them, your idols have got dark secrets too. Unfortunately, every person you idolize is going to piss you off in one area. And so that's why I have low expectations on people. That's why I hate cancel culture, because essentially we're canceling people because we're assuming that they're going to be perfect in every area of their life for their entire life. But it's silly, because it's not possible. We're all going to make a mistake.
It's also, if you look at anybody in history who's the titan of the world in terms of Nobel Peace Prizes, whatever it is, there's all things in their backgrounds that aren't perfect, because it's impossible. Even the greatest humans ever, nobody's lived a perfect life.
Yeah. And in fact, I don't want to meet someone that's perfect in every area of their life. To me, that would be boring.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's simply possible.
It's been great to chat to you, Tim. For the people listening, if they want to hear more from you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, best place is just my name, so timdenning.com, and it's just Denning is my last name. Normally I encourage people to sign up for the email list. I'm very generous to my email list. They get a lot of free books, they get free courses, they get Q&As that for free, and I also do 2 free newsletters as well. And everyone keeps telling me I should charge for them, but I don't. So yeah, if you want more of that sort of stuff, that's where you get it.
Awesome. What I like to finish up on is, what's one small thing that's brought you joy recently?
Yeah, one small thing. So I won't name names, but someone big in the Bitcoin community, unfortunately, was exposed a few days ago for scamming people. And this person, I don't know them personally, but I know a lot of people that do. And I was a bit disappointed when I obviously learned, and it took a while to figure out. But what was really cool is I looked at all the comments, and despite this person scamming people and losing millions of dollars of money, the overwhelming response was, we should show him empathy. He's probably going through a very dark time, and we shouldn't cancel him. In fact, if anything, we should pick up the phone and see how we can help him. And then what was really cool is one of the people, there was a guy that lent him 5 Bitcoin, which at the time was around $250,000. And this person came out publicly and said, even though he scammed me, I don't want the Bitcoin back. I would like him to not repay the debt because he's going through a really difficult time. And I just watched this. I was like, wow, normally you would expect that to blow up and cancel him and he's a scumbag. And it's like, no, people are like, he's gone into a dark path, but that's not who he is. And how do we help this person? So that brought me a lot of joy to kind of hear that.
I guess it's a lesson for everybody, isn't it? We always assume the worst of people, and sometimes it's worth just hearing what's happened to them, because maybe there's something we can do to help them too.
Correct. I mean, this person went from investing to accidentally becoming a gambler. I argue that it can happen to any one of us. And the reality is that if we don't help this person, what do you think is going to happen? I can tell you what will happen. I mean, he's lost his entire business. He's obviously completely bankrupt, and he owes some pretty nasty people a lot of money. People commit suicide when that sort of thing happens. So Here you've got a community that's got around and said, we don't want that person to lose their life. Let's give them a second shot. That was so awesome to watch.
Yeah. And that's a lovely note to end on there. Thank you, Tim. It's been great to have you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode and found Tim's advice useful. I want to highlight what I mentioned at the beginning about reframes, and tie this in with what I mentioned earlier on about pessimism. Sometimes we have an idea planted in our minds that stops us believing in ourselves. If we can identify these, then the next step is to work on trigger phrases that will snap us out of it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps to get the message out further. Wherever you're listening, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and to share on your social media channels. If you want to see more of my work and advice, you can find all of the links in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.